Hello, everyone. Welcome to CEDIA Expo Virtual. In this session, we'll be discussing securing the future home. Our panel of experts will explore how the continuing rise of consumer awareness around home security creates substantial business opportunities for dealers and integrators. I'm your session moderator, Brad Russell. I'm the research director for Connected Home at Parks Associates in Dallas. For over 3 decades, our firm has been conducting consumer research and industry consulting around emerging consumer technologies, including smart home, residential security, connected entertainment, and home networking, virtually the full range of technologies offered by CEDIA dealers. We're at the threshold of a new era of home security and safety. We have physical security enabled by AI-powered activity monitoring services. We have cameras with advanced video and audio analytics. Smart speakers and other speech-enabled control interfaces are greatly simplifying the user experience. Security system adoption in the US currently stands at 33% of US broadband households, having grown 17% year over year from 2018 to 2019. The value of interactive security systems has greatly expanded as they've incorporated smart home automation and video streaming and storage services. Finally, high-speed broadband, both fixed and emerging 5G mobile, is opening up new capabilities that will compound the need for more robust cybersecurity services and remote network monitoring. During this session, we will learn how to leverage these emerging systems to increase customer offerings and grow your business, all with security in mind. So now I'd like to welcome our panelists. First, welcome Mike McEnaney. Welcome, Mike.
How are you, Brad?
Great, glad you're joining us.
Happy to be here. We put out, just so you know, a little bit about my company, CT Lab Global Media. We help produce the IFA show in Berlin, Germany every year. Here in New York, we do CE Week, and we also help produce the CE China show over in China. I am the content director, as I said, of Dealerscope magazine, Connected Design magazine, and those associated websites.
Great, thanks, Mike. Nice to have you with us today. Also, meet Luis Rodriguez. Welcome, Luis.
Hey, thank you so much. No, this is great. I'm actually a New England-based company based in Boston, Massachusetts. We're an integration firm that does a lot of alarms and home automation, and we're glad to be here today.
Awesome. This is going to be a great conversation. Let me remind all of our attendees, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat function and a Q&A function. Please make sure to put any and all questions into the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end of the session. All right, so Luis, I want to start off with you. A lot of traditional AV dealers are adding security to their business offerings. Can you speak a little bit to this growing trend and how it benefits dealers?
Yeah, definitely. So recently in the coming years, a lot of dealers have focused a lot on recurring RMR, recurring monthly revenue for their baseline revenue for their company. As we know, a lot of integrators don't have an exit strategy to sell their company. So they're following the suit of alarm companies where they create an RMR model, where then in turn, when they exit their company, they're able to sell that portion of the business off for whatever a dollar amount. That's one main reason. The other main reason is we're in the home already, and a lot of clients ask already if we're going to do the alarm and integrate it into the automation system, as opposed to calling us and then calling the alarm company to come after the fact.
So how much of a challenge has this been for traditional AV dealers to kind of expand into security?
I think the biggest challenge is they don't know where to start, and also licensing. Every state has a different licensing for alarms as opposed to low voltage or for integration. So in our state, we have to have a securities license. In Massachusetts and Rhode Island, you have to have a low voltage contractor's license to do security. That's one step. The next step is working with a central station where that does the 24/7 monitoring. They don't know where to start with that or how to shop that. For example, when you have a central station and to monitor the companies and they charge $24.99 a month, central station charges a dealer a different percentage of that, but they don't know that that's available to them. But I think those are the biggest challenges integrators are having right now.
Sure. Well, of course, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of home services have been challenged. both on selling new accounts and doing installations. What have you seen in the way dealers have responded to COVID-19, either limitations or opportunities?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are great because right now a lot of big companies, cable companies can't go in homes, right? Alarm companies won't go in homes. Well, with us being essential business, we're able to go into these homes and offer those services. For example, in our area, we know the Cox, Comcast, ADT, Vivint, a lot of them weren't able to go in homes, and people were having issues. They had nowhere else to turn to. So what we did is we said, hey, this is the benefit of working with an integrator locally rather than a big box company, and we can actually service your system now. Would you like us to do that? So that was really good for us. One of the challenges though is actually doing takeover panels, right? A lot of clients don't know what they have, or they're leery about security or privacy and things like that. Because now people are home. We ran into a couple of projects saying, well, I have an alarm system, but everybody's home now, and now I'm working from home, and I do financial stuff that I'm doing from home when I usually do from my office. How secure is this? Are you able to see, when they think of security, they sometimes think that we can actually see in their computers for an alarm. So you have to be able to explain what the differences are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've seen, on the one hand, you would think that not being away from home as much would undercut the value proposition of home security. And yet what we've seen across the industry is that actually security subscriptions have thrived during COVID. People are adding on devices like more cameras so that they can watch kids that are studying or whatever. So it's actually, despite the challenges, really security business has been quite robust, during what is a difficult time. Michael, I want to turn to you just from a consumer angle. How would you judge the awareness of different types of security systems that are available today?
Jumping on exactly what you just said, there is definitely a greater awareness, but more important to that, there's this desire now, despite the fact, as you said, that people are home more, they kind of just have developed a greater desire to feel safe while they're home. I mean, as well as when they're out, they want their home safe and secure, but this whole notion of seeing who's at the door when the doorbell rings, or making sure a package isn't being stolen that's sitting on a doorstep, there's definitely a far greater awareness for that. Combine that desire with the growth of the Internet of Things market, and I think awareness has really jumped dramatically with regard to this tech existing, and the idea that people want to feel safe and secure, even despite the fact that they're home a lot more than they were. I think that's where we're at right now. To back that up for a second, we look at research all the time as editors on a bunch of publications, and that recently from Markets and Markets, we're seeing that the market is valued now globally anyway at about 53.5 billion this year, and it's expected to jump to close to 79 billion by 2025. So certainly awareness and growth are both on the rise.
And Mike, those figures are both hardware sales and recurring revenue from monitoring?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of it for integrators, is that they can make some money on the hardware, on the front end, as well as the recurring revenue that Luis was talking about.
Yep.
Of course, the market is a lot different today than it used to be, where you just had kind of one kind of security system that was installed, and now we have, not only do we have multiple kinds of security systems, from legacy to interactive services, but now we have all these other kinds of devices. So kind of what's your take on the landscape of options that are available to consumers today?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll be anxious to see what Luis has to say, but we have this DIY segment of the market now that really has erupted over the course of the last year or so. The idea that consumers, again, are becoming more aware. They now have these options to install themselves, as the price of installation with some of the systems can get a little bit pricey for some. So with these DIY systems hitting the market from companies like Ring, I guess it's Simple Safe and Remo, they're running anywhere from $100 to $300, relatively easy to install. And from our experience, I'll say the effectiveness is anywhere from fair to pretty good. So that's an interesting market to keep an eye on. And again, there are limitations to the DIY, but with regard to price and ease of installation, pretty solid market to keep an eye on, I'd say.
Sure. Yeah, so we have DIY systems, we have the traditional pro install systems, and we have some dealers who actually are selling self-installable systems, but still attaching monitoring and providing a lot of support. So, Luis, from your perspective, I mean, how should integrators be thinking about the options facing consumers and then positioning what they're offering as really of the superior value?
I really think, when they come up to a DIY product, the very first thing is not to do is talk bad about any product. That's number one, right? So we teach our salespeople and our installers and everybody in the company is, hey, you're buying that DIY product, walk me through the process of how this is going to get installed and what made you choose this product. Now, when you ask that question to customers, they're like, well, I really don't know. I know I need this alarm panel. I know I need this camera, but I don't know where it's going to go. What that's doing is actually, they're going to feel more comfortable as talking to a professional who's done it before and say, hey, okay, great. Let's look at that. So you have this camera system and you have this panel. Is this in the right location? Probably not. Okay, you need 3 other cameras. Okay, great. So now what we're doing is we're actually educating the client on the DIY product and the reason why to go for a professional installation. At the end of the conversation, we're able to say, well, based upon what you told me, I don't think a DIY product is good in your situation, or maybe it is, and these are the pros and cons of both. And when you sit down and lay everything out, and not even talking dollars, people feel more comfortable. And one of the biggest things we say is, how important is your security? If someone were to break in your home and you installed this and you've never done it before, are you going to feel 100% confident that your family will be safe? If you can't say that with uncertainty, then I think you need to go with a professional installation, because nobody wants that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that the strength of integrators has always been their ability to consult, right, with the homeowner, right, and really thoughtfully figure out where their pain points are, what use cases are most interesting to them, and then match the devices and the systems. Even with DIY, I mean, the average consumer just doesn't really understand all the options available. So, that's really important. Now, Luis, earlier you mentioned kind of some of the challenges being around some licensing and maybe identifying a central station that they would contract with for the monitoring portion of the service. How well are these security systems integrating with kind of recognized AV and entertainment systems like Control4, Savant, or Elan, or others?
Yeah, it's getting easier and easier every day. I know when we do installation, if we're doing Savant, Crestron, or Control4, whatever it may be, we actually look up the driver prior to buying the product, and we make sure it's the most current driver available for that client based upon what system we're installing. 5 years ago, it was a little harder. Nowadays, it's just getting simpler. It's really, really simple. What we do also like is a lot of the systems also you can integrate into Control4, whatever it may be, but also have a standalone. So you don't have to have one or the other, you can have both.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, everyone talks about the value of a unified experience, right? When an integrator can integrate, right? Pull it all together in a simplified single app. But of course, a lot of these interactive services apps, they have a pretty robust feature set that's likely not going to be duplicated in the Control4 app. So Mike, what's your experience just with consumer preferences around the security control interface and the kind of feature sets that are offered by either a home automation app versus a security monitoring app?
Yeah, well, we're hearing from a lot of our integrators with regard to Connected Design magazine, and what we're hearing, and Luis, I'll be anxious again to hear what you have to say, but we're hearing that some of those smart home platforms don't have the most enjoyable user experience when it comes to home security. The apps are functional, but we're hearing integrators tell us they're finding most of their clients are preferring the user experience of the standalone security apps like Alarm.com. Again, I think being on the front line, Luis would have a better take on that. But again, this is a little bit of what we're hearing from our folks.
Yeah.
So Luis, Yeah, what's been your
Yeah,
experience?
the way we explain it is when we integrate it into a control system, we tell them, hey, it's alarm.com light version. It's not going to have the 100% functionality as a standalone app, but it will have, you'll be able to view the cameras, you'll be able to do this, do that, but this is it. But you want to deep dive into the system, you have to log into a remote app. So what we typically do is we do, for control flow, we'll integrate it all to one system. And then we'll actually, on their cell phone or tablet, actually make a block of their lighting, their security, different apps for every single system if they want to deep dive into it. But what that also does for us is, God forbid if, it happens, if the control system fails or does not work or something happens, or better yet, they forget to subscribe to the yearly fee, it happens, they can go back to the app and access their alarm system. So explaining that to the client, it makes them feel warm and fuzzy because you're saying, hey, you have this one here that's all easy, but if you want to really see your alarm, for example, flourish, then go right to the app.
Again, that consultation is invaluable, and it's something that you guys have that isn't available with any kind of a DIY setup. So that's golden, and that's great to hear.
Correct.
Yeah,
And then when you see them, and when you see a lot with DIY is a lot of people buy DIY products, but they really don't know. I talk to my wife, and my wife says, "Oh," and I tell her, "Natasha, where'd you learn that from?" "Oh, the internet." "Oh, and with the that must be true."
Oh,
It's better on the internet, right? So, and a lot of customers like that. People are more educated now, so you have to make sure that don't disparage what their research has done, but educate them on what we're doing, on what we're selling them.
yeah, well, that's great. I mean, really helping consumers get the most out of either the security app or the home automation app according to what they need, right? To fit their lifestyle. So that makes a lot of sense. I want to touch again on the central station aspect of the value chain again, because you talked about, a lot of AV dealers, they're not really familiar with the central stations that are available to them to contract with, and they may not be as familiar with, the interactive services platform that work with certain monitoring stations. So, Luis, I mean, do you have any advice to integrators in making that selection about?
Yeah, my advice is if you want to start in the alarm business, the very first thing you have to do is have your paperwork in order. All of your contracts have to be signed a specific way, be organized, and be stamped in a methodical way. Because if you're going to sell that portion of your company, that's the first thing they're going to ask for, is all your contracts and everything's in order. If it's not, and if your P&L on the alarm side isn't separate from your AV, then that's another thing you got to separate. So you really got to focus on the alarm as a separate entity. That's number one. Get the paperwork straight. Second thing is find out what type of alarm system you're going to use and central station. Central stations, there are different ones where you can actually say, hey, look, if I do business with you, they charge different dollar amounts up to this many clients. You get this many clients, and then so on and so forth. One of the things you want to ask is, what is the response time? What happens if this goes bad? Or if you're doing fire, how fast can you respond to a home? And I'm saying the integrator. The third thing would be understanding what you should charge, because there are a lot of competition out there for alarms. There are companies out there that are selling the product at cost because they want the RMR. Because what they're doing is they're trying to build up their baseline, get $2,000-3,000 subscribers, take that and sell it, right? So you need to be wary of how you're pricing your product, whether it be the material or whether it be the RMR. You want to make sure that you're in line with everyone else in the area.
Yeah, that's a great point. So obviously what we're talking about here is the business economics of the long-term value of a 36-month contract, right, of recurring revenue for approximately $50 a month, versus the hardware sale up front, which has a little margin in it for the dealer. But I mean, the lion's share of the value, right, is in that long-term contract. So if your business model as an AV integrator is to flip those contracts, after a year or so, then that's,
Yeah.
You don't want to.
Because
You don't want
what
to.
I'm finding is what I'm finding with a lot of integrators, Brad, is we're in the instant gratification business, meaning we get a big check and we're done. If you talk to an alarm companies and go to an alarm convention, those guys, they're like, hey, I get a $5,000 check a month, and then next month will be bigger, and next month. So you got to get rid of the instant gratification and think of long term, saying, hey, if I sold 1,000 accounts at $20 a month, I'm going to be at this dollar amount, but it's going to take 2 years. So that's what they have to focus on. A lot of dealers don't really get that, and they want, hey, I sold 10 accounts and I only got $200 a month. Okay, great. Do that for the next 5 years and you see what happens.
Yeah, no, you're really wise to point that out, because it's a total shift from a hardware mindset to a service mindset.
Right.
And the other thing I want to ask you about that is, the other attached services which actually incrementally increase RMR, right? So if you have a central monitoring station that supports video verification, right? That could be another $5 a month in RMR, right? If they have video storage plans or whatever. So you have to think about the capabilities of the monitoring station and the interactive services platform in order to figure out what's the best value that you can offer to your customer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's change topics just a little bit away from residential security to kind of this other issue of cybersecurity, right? Because AV integrators have long been also responsible for, if not installing home networks, beefing them up, right? Improving the capacities of the home network to support all of the connected technology that they're selling into this space. And of course, the big trend now is not just endpoint software that sits on discrete devices like smartphones, tablets, and computers, but it's also network monitoring cybersecurity software, right? And many of these solutions they're very sophisticated. They're powered by artificial intelligence, machine learning. They have software agents that sit on the hardware, and they have cloud services. How are you guys thinking about the integrator opportunity to also bring cybersecurity solutions to their customers? Mike, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump on there real quick. I mean, obviously, as a bundle, if you're thinking about home security, if you're a consumer and you're having an integrator in to install a home security system, and you're not thinking about cybersecurity as the consumer or as the integrator, you're not mentioning it as well, it's a major lost opportunity. It's making headlines now almost daily. Cybersecurity has become such a big issue. I think the consumer a year or so ago just kind of figured, well, I'm never going to get hacked. I don't think they feel that anymore. I think people now are really literally waiting for when they're going to get hacked. So I think cybersecurity, again, we chatted about awareness with home security, it's way up on the cybersecurity front. So yeah, I think integrators need to absolutely make that part of their pitch, part of their consultation, which we've talked about is so important. So yeah, I think today more than ever, and again, COVID's done a lot of funny things. This pandemic we've seen interesting rises in certain categories and certain decreases. I think, again, awareness during this time period is majorly heightened, and I think it's absolutely viewed as an opportunity.
Luis, what are your thoughts? Is cybersecurity something that an integrator can leverage to kind of differentiate themselves from the competition?
Yeah, Brad, I'm really excited you brought this topic up, because this is something we've been thinking about for a while. The way we think, the way we explain it to clients is, you have an alarm that protects your home. 80% of people do all of their billing, their email, their texting, all through their mobile device. And now you leave your house and you go to a Starbucks, you go to your friend's house, you're susceptible to a lot of different things that you're in different networks. So there are a lot of startup companies right now that we're talking to, and I'm sure all the integrators are too, where they'll actually have a process. So let me give you an example. If you ask the average customer, if your cell phone or your laptop gets hacked, what do? You're going to get exactly that, nothing. They don't know. There's no process currently. So now with the new process of one of the companies we're talking to is, hey, if this happens, if you get hacked, the very first thing you can do is call this 1-800 number. When you call this 1-800 number, we're then going to look into your system and find out what's going on and see what type of malware, spy, whatever is in your system that's being hacked. Then the second thing is we're going to contact your insurance company. Let them aware of this, because we're going to see how, we don't know what the impact is. Then the third thing is we're going to start recovering as much as we can and letting you know if it's ransomware, if it's worth the $10,000 they're asking for, or if it's not, right? And then they're also going to talk about cloud storaging to a secured network for all your privacy things. You'll be surprised how many people have a lot of important things on their laptops, in their homes, in their cell phones, and it's not backed up. So cybersecurity, in my opinion, in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be the next big thing. And there are a lot of startup companies out there that are been having this discussion for the last 2-3 years. But now that everyone's home, this is going to be a big hit for us.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. It just seems like an enormous opportunity to help explain to consumers, as you did, the difference between endpoint security and a VPN network, right? And identity theft and network security. And there's all these kinds of products available that are dealing with threats that are all very, very different. How are integrators working with like the local broadband providers when it comes to deploying cybersecurity solutions in the home?
I know we don't work with a lot of the broadband providers. They're actually, doing their own thing right now. I really don't honestly think there's any company that's actually doing it to its fullest potential yet. I think we're in the very early stages of this, and there's a lot of language left to be written on cybersecurity, on what it covers, what it doesn't cover. More importantly is, we're dealing with, if I took your cell phone, would you be comfortable and unsecured, no password on it, if I had it in my pocket? You ask the average person, they're probably not, right? So how can we secure those devices, through a cybersecurity company that we work with? So, I mean, to answer your question, I really don't see us working with, the broadband companies yet, just because there isn't enough language out there.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe it starts with the router gateway manufacturers, right? Some of them have embedded cybersecurity solutions that come with the hardware, or something like that. It's basically because, the integrator's role is to specify, the highest quality networking hardware to support all of the work, protect the whole home. And another issue related to cybersecurity monitoring is just monitoring the home network, right, to make sure everything's running smoothly. So some Control 4 integrators, for instance, they have the capacity through Control 4 to actually monitor the home network to know when devices fall off the network and needed to get rebooted, just to kind of ensure the user experience. What's been your experience so far with integrators' response to these kinds of remote monitoring tools to make sure that the consumer enjoys a really good user experience? Mike, have you seen some of this?
Oh, we absolutely are. And it's funny, what I think you opened with, Louise, is this idea that if you ask the average consumer a lot of these questions regarding these type topics, you hear crickets. There's no response. So again, it's education, and they're getting it. They're starting to get it. You go back a year and a half, 2 years ago, I don't think it was even on consumers' minds to worry about cybersecurity and cyber theft. But again, 900 headlines later about retail establishments being hacked and consumer data being compromised, they're far more aware of it today. And I think, again, to talk about home security as an integrator and not mention cybersecurity, A, is kind of borderline negligent, and B, you're missing a wonderful opportunity for some additional revenue. So yeah, we are seeing more and more about it and starting to talk more and more about it in the publication.
Great. Luis, what's your experience with remote monitoring of the network, not just the cybersecurity, but just the functionality and resilience of the installation?
Yeah, so the first thing we talk about is how important is your network? You ask that person. So I read an article about 6 months ago, and it said people realize an hour and a half before they have no Wi-Fi before they realize they have no water, which is amazing, right? So I asked the customer, hey, how important is Wi-Fi? Oh, well, it's pretty important. Okay, great. You're working from home. You have kids, Netflix, Hulu, all these things going on. So great. Let's make sure we install something that is robust. And we always recommend updating your Wi-Fi network every 4 years, right? There things change. So besides that, and if something goes wrong, we'll be here 24/7. We have a 24/7 tech support that you can email, text, or chat if anything goes wrong with the network. Now, we charge $50 to $75 a month. Rarely do we get people telling us it's too much money. When someone does, and we say, great, how much is your cell phone bill? I know it's definitely more than $75 a month. So then when they realize that, they're like, okay, that's not that bad. We do partner up. We're partnering up with a company called Parasol. And then you also have One Vision. There are various companies out there that can do this for you. But more importantly for the integrator, it's a quality of life. What we've noticed is I'm not getting phone calls at 10, 11 o'clock at night anymore. If you need my services, you have to pay a monthly fee for 24/7. While media is not open 24/7, our remote tech support is. So once you get that, the integrator gets that, then they're able to be like, hey, okay, great. It's not only for RMR, but it's also quality of life.
I think around-the-clock tech support is vital. That's such a huge part of the equation. So sorry, Brad, didn't want to jump on.
No, all good. I mean, what you're describing is something I want to make sure everybody totally gets it, right? Because you are selling remote monitoring and premium tech support as a service, right? Just like you would sell security monitoring. And you've identified third-party companies like One Vision and Parasol and others that partner with integrators to deliver these services, right? And so it's leveraging your sales and marketing capability in order to drive greater RMR. So it's another great example of how these integrators can expand their businesses.
Correct.
Well, listen, guys, this has been a great discussion. I know we could talk about this all afternoon, but I'm sure that our attendees have a lot of questions, and we want to make sure we provide plenty of time to get to those. So thanks again for joining us today, and we're going to move into the Q&A portion of the session now. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our live Q&A. I'm Brad Russell. I have Luis and Mike here with me again. In our video, it was a great opportunity to cover a lot of topics pretty quickly. And we want to dive deeper in the next 15 minutes or so. So thanks for all of your questions. Let us just kind of start to jump in here because we've got a number of things to talk about. So one of the first questions from the audience, and this came back when we were talking about DIY a lot. Do you foresee DIY security taking shares from monitored security, or is the pie actually growing bigger? I'll save my opinion. I have some consumer data, but you guys, you have an opinion about DIY, whether it's cannibalizing from monitored or not?
Well, I got to tell you, I do. And the one thing I'll say that we've noticed most of all about DIY is products aren't configured the same or I should say they're configured the same for everyone. And in a lot of instances, the setup the manufacturer may have, it's not one size fits all. What a DIY setup that might work in one home is really very ineffective in another home. So I think DIY's got a little bit of a way to go, I think, before it starts eating the profits of integrators that are doing installations on these security systems. Again, as I said during the Q&A, some solid product out there, but again, that market's got a little bit of a way to go before it becomes any kind of a factor, I think, for integrators. Okay. Luis, tell me how you feel. Anxious to hear.
What's your take, Luis? Oh, you're still on mute. Hey, Luis, can you come off mute?
I'm mute here.
There you go.
Hear me now?
Yep.
You hear me now?
There you go.
Great. Yeah, no, I totally agree with Mike. And, DIY definitely has a long way to go. It's not a custom product, and it's not for everyone. It's, it has a space in the electronics world, but there is a lot of room to grow.
Well, I can tell you from a consumer perspective, we saw at the end of 2019 that while the installed base of security systems grew like 5% year over year, that the share of those that were pro-monitored did not diminish. It also actually grew a bit. So from us, our standpoint, that tells us that this really is a new market. That DIY is expanding the market. And you know, some DIY systems are attaching some pro monitoring, although that's still kind of a really small number right now. But so far, it just looks like a market expansion that DIY is providing a program, especially for younger consumers, lower household income, to get their feet wet. They want something to make them feel safer, but they're not yet willing to commit to the cost, you know, of a pro monitor system. So far, so good, I think, for the pro part of the business. And you know, I think there's a lot of people who are hopeful that they'll upsell later, you know, to a mature system that with all the capabilities and all the services. Switching topics a little bit here, someone in our audience asked if you could give some recommendations of your favorite products and systems and why you like them. Luis?
Yeah, some of the products that we like to use. Yeah, some of the products we like to use are for security would be you know, Clear One, Alarm.com. You know, and those type of systems that we like to use, pretty much our go-to. And we integrate a lot with Control 4. That's probably our go-to integration product in-house. Savant definitely has that stuff. But what's also nice about, let's go back, with Clear One, it definitely has a lot of integration with DIY products. So a lot of people, if they have Nest, they have Google in their home already, Clear One can actually be installed and it can work with the DIY products. So it's a really easy segue to get into the alarm business if you're starting very slowly.
So are you presenting options to your clients based upon these two security products have different feature sets? Or are you dividing the market by price? Like I have this product for this price point and this product for this price point, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, we don't go by different prices. We actually go by each, you know, project. So for example, we want to make sure that the system we install doesn't hinder us on growth or upselling or adding to the system. So for example, if a customer says, hey, I want cameras. Well, I know the cameras that we're going to spec out, whether it be IC Real Time, whether it be a Snap product, whether it be, you know, Hike, whatever that brand is, I know that those brands can integrate into a system like Control 4, Savant, or Crestron, right? Then they call us back and then we sell Control 4 and then we overlay it into it. Then they want touchscreens and we just keep adding. So we make sure that the products that we implement are adaptable and work together with other companies.
Okay. Great. Mike, what's some of your favorite products and systems?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you on the integrator side, I think Luis turned over all the right rocks. Those are certainly the same ones we're hearing the most about and that we're writing about in connected design. And I'll be totally honest on the DIY side. I don't know that I don't have any favorites. All of the systems we've played with, and I won't shout out manufacturer names, have left something to be desired. Again, back to what I said earlier. They do a fair to okay job on the monitoring front, but they're not really one size fits all. The install is simple, but the products are lacking. There's always something they seem to be missing, and or there's a door they won't work on, or the app is kind of poorly constructed. So I think on that front, I would really reserve recommendation on the DIY front. I think as of right now, what we said earlier is absolutely the case. If you're really serious about home security, I think you need to let the pros take over.
Okay, great. By the way, guys, we're getting a little feedback. I don't know if you can turn your volume down a little bit. Maybe that would help. Luis, kind of while we're on the security conversation, someone asked, where does the line in the sand get drawn for needing a security license? In other words, pre-wire, device install, etc. So what are the project criteria for needing this security license?
Yeah, so for our area, it's actually for pre-wire and device installation. So if you're wiring for cameras, you know, in Rhode Island, where one of our areas we work in, you can't do that. You have to have the low voltage contracted electrical license for that. Doesn't make sense, obviously. Massachusetts, you can wire for it, but you can't install it. You have to have a background check, stuff like that. So the way I would do is find out what your local area, find out what the rules and regulations are for pre-wiring and installing products, because it does vary state by state.
And if someone doesn't know where to go to find out the regulations, where should they go?
We actually go to, so we actually go to, for the final regulation is, Department of Education. So electrical, you can actually start with the electrical department of any city, really. Call the city, say, hey, speak to electrical inspector, and the inspector will tell you exactly where to go, where to get certified, where to get training, and the costs. So that's the easiest way. Then just call your local electrical place in your town.
Yeah, I know that's a kind of basic question, but some people may be new and not quite know how to set up their business. Let's switch topics a little bit. So someone asked about the customer personalization capability. So how open are the custom installed systems to allowing the homeowner to modify the system, the UI, the scenes, add or remove devices? So I know some brands have made great strides recently in empowering homeowners to do things without having a dealer call. But could you guys, Mike, I'll let you start, and then Luis, just talk about kind of the current state of the market of homeowner configuration and personalization?
That's come a long way. I mean, obviously that really was a little non-existent a while back, but at this show in particular, I've seen several demos where the customization and the ability to create different scenes and such is wonderful, and it really allows the end user a chance to talk to the installer and specifically customize to whatever the situation is within their house, their neighborhood. Luis will be able to talk about this, I think, in far greater detail, but from our perspective on the publication, we have seen what we feel like are great strides in this space.
Yeah, Luis?
Yeah, definitely. So I think definitely there've been lots of big strides as far as, the consumer making changes. So if we look at it 5 years ago, if you look at your demographics, 5 years ago, customers weren't even asking for that. But now we have these millennials growing, and they're buying houses. They're asking for those things. They want control of their system, right? But they also have the knowledge to be able to fix, hey, if my Nest thermostat falls offline, I know how to go into settings and add it back to the network. 5 years ago, our client base didn't want to do that, but they didn't know how. So I see as a trend goes forward, we should see with a lot of companies start opening that up to that next generation of people who are going to be our consumers.
Yeah. I certainly think consumer expectations for the freedom to be able to control it and to modify it. When you have guests come in, just throw a party, all kinds of reasons why someone would want to change the configuration. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That generational shift is gigantic. I mean, obviously, we're going to start to see that more and more. So it's interesting to see Luis bring it up. I would imagine over the next 5-8 years, you'll see that an even greater move in that direction. You're right. The millennials are certainly more digital natives than the generation that is in front of them. So yeah, that's an interesting comment.
Yeah, I think a short-sighted integrator might think that, that means a loss of a service revenue for me. But it's really going to be key, an ante to play the game, right? I mean, can't offer consumers that kind of freedom. That could be the reason why they wouldn't go with you or, go with your. We have another question that I think came up probably when we were talking about cybersecurity and home networking. Someone has asked, what is your opinion of integrated firewall routers and routers like that's in here, mesh networking system to provide whole home firewall protection, especially with all the IoT devices that can be individually protected. So kind of what's your take on, I call these kind of consumer grade, retail products like Netgear Orbi, Google Wi-Fi, there's Linksys, VLOPs, there's a number of them.
what's your take on using them for that kind of network security, at least in a firewall sense, protection? Luis?
I would say definitely with the firewall protection. Anytime you sell like an Orbi or an Eero, that's not one of the things that we aim for. We've all heard the scary stories that happened about 8 months ago. So we actually stand by with a lot of pro enterprise grade network systems all day long.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Mike, what's your take on the kind of those retail facing products?
Yeah, I'll echo what Luis just said. And obviously the growth of the IoT, and I just saw a statistic recently that the average number of connected products in homes now is up to 6 or 7. So I think, that is becoming the whole notion of a firewall becoming a far bigger deal. And again, I think I'll stick with what Luis said. He's the expert, and I 100% agree.
Yeah, I think it's, it's back to that DIY versus do it for me, approach. Those retail systems, they offer the ability to partition networks and, create a level of protection. But Luis, to your point, I mean, they're not carrier grade products. Luis, could you say a word about what kind of networking products you do install?
Yeah, so the brands, we actually go with Ruckus, Access Networks, and then our entry level would be like a package network from Control4.
Yeah. So for those integrators, if networking's new to you, I mean, these are some commercial grade products that are very respected and open up a whole other range of features that you would not find in a consumer grade, networking product. Okay, well, you know what? I think that's going to about wrap up our time today. Guys, this has been a great conversation. And for the audience, thank you for listening. We wish you well in your business. We do hope that you'll find some motivation in the things that Luis and Mike have shared about all of these opportunities, because it really is a new day to grow your business in some new ways. So thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to joining you again. Take care.
Pleasure.